Hi, it's Katie with First Source, and we're excited to be back with another episode of People with Purpose with Love Living Local 315. I'm excited today to have our listeners be able to hear from Tom, Lynn, Lou, and Deb. And we're going to talk about a topic today that we've been hearing more and more. 20 and 30-year-olds have a lot of financial myths. There are things that they believe that simply aren't true. And we're going to debunk some of those today. And really, we are all a little bit later than our 20s and 30s. And so we're going to share some of the things that we wish we had known when we were that age. Or maybe some things that we heard that were untrue, that we wish that someone had debunked for us. So let's go ahead and get started today and just talk about, let's think about taking ourselves back in the past and really, when did money become real for you? And for me, even though I had a part-time job, I had a car, I had spending money, I think it really still didn't become real for me until I was out of college on my own and having to pay rent. You know, that was really the moment that it was like, you know, even though mom and dad are there, this is not their responsibility. And I have to make sure that my money coming in minimally covers my rent and then everything else that I need. So tell me just a little bit about you guys. Tom, let's start with you. When did money become real for you?
For me, it was, I know, early on when I got my first job and I got that first paycheck and I realized what taxes were. You know, that's when it's like, wait, I worked 40 hours and I was supposed to get X amount of money. Why is it X minus 20%? So that's when it was real for me. But also, when I did get that first job and needed a car and, you know, my parents were very supportive, but they weren't supportive financially at that state. So for me, that's when I really needed to make sure that I was saving my money and using it properly.
So when those taxes came out, that was probably a big surprise for you. And did you have to all of a sudden kind of budget differently and fumble your way through that? Did you have help?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I mean, there wasn't a lot of help except, you know, when I said to my parents, what's going on with this check? And they said, hey, that's the way it is. You're in America. That made me realize at that point that, yeah, when you think you're going to make the full amount of the check and you're not, that you do have to adjust how you're living.
So that's definitely something that our listeners will want to know and be able to prepare for. Lynn, how about you?
To piggyback off of what you said, I remember having summer jobs since I was 14 years old. And I mean, that's the one thing that my parents instilled in us was always working and making our own money because they had 5 kids to support. So it was just a reality check to see your paycheck and then buying your school clothes for the first time and making sure you had money. And it was, do I really want to spend that much money on a shirt? Because it's my own money. I don't want to waste my money on a $40 shirt.
You learn very quickly that wants versus needs piece, right? And in the past, it didn't matter. You could do kind of whatever you wanted. And now you were responsible for that. And you really had to think about those things. And especially something like that shirt. Yeah. Can I get one that's less than that? And you really start to think differently,
it was like taking a step back and not taking it for granted anymore.
Absolutely.
You know, and it was just a big wake-up call.
And Deb talks about wants versus needs with our students all the time. So that's a huge takeaway for our younger listeners, really, is to think about that budget and those percentages and make sure that you're really looking at that from a pragmatic standpoint. Lou, what about you?
My biggest time that it actually became real is when I was trying to buy my first house. And the majority of my life, I was all cash. Never knew what credit was. No one ever explained it to me. And when I went to go to a realtor, they're like, do you have any credit? No, I don't. So I had to start building my credit up to be able to then proceed to buy my first home. And that's when it was the true value of, okay, hey, this is what I have to do to dedicate to get into, you know, just a healthy living situation versus renting versus owning.
And that's something I think that's really important because at the time that mentally you're ready to buy that house, if you haven't financially prepared, if no one told you that, if no one explained that you should be building credit, now you're behind and you're not able to get into that house immediately. We actually did a podcast a little while ago talking about preparing for a mortgage. And, Tony was great when he was saying it's not a couple $1,000s. This is tens of thousands of dollars that you really need to plan, prepare, save up for that down payment and closing costs and things of that nature. So that's a really good point. And I think it's important for teens and young adults to really start building that credit wisely now. Lynn, can you talk a little bit about that and some things that they can do now to start to build that good credit?
The first thing that they should do, and it's one of those things that I was always told not to do when I was younger, and I'm sure several people our age have been told, was to never take out a credit card. But honestly, that's probably one of the first ways that you can really establish credit. It's just a minimal line that we would give the member, and it's a modest payment amount, and it just really helps them to get into the routine of having a monthly payment and establishing that credit and really learning what does credit mean, because not everybody knows what that means. I remember when I got my first loan, it was a share secured loan. I didn't really know what that meant.
So it's that explaining and
it's
educating.
Really just educating the member of what they need to do and what the responsibility is.
And
then if it helps them to get their first car, it's just a stepping stone. And that's the perfect stepping stone with a credit card. And it teaches them at a young age how to use them wisely and not get out of control with them.
Right. So if they make smaller charges and pay those off in full every month, that starts to build that good credit.
Yes.
So credit cards don't have to be
They don't have
scary.
to be a bad thing, and they don't have to be scary.
I think at that early age, too, you don't really realize what it is to build credit and what credit means.
Mm-hmm.
I think, many times when you're young, you think you can just go buy a car and, everything's easy. But, establishing credit means that those who are going to lend you money now and in the future can look back and say, okay, this person is responsible with making payments on that credit card or not, right? Which will determine, are they going to lend you the money? Is the rate going to be higher? Those are the things that I think when you're young, it's critical to learn.
Absolutely. So hopefully our listeners will take away today that it's important to start building that good credit, making those good financial decisions so that they can be prepared for those larger purchases when they come to fruition. Let's talk about if you could go back and tell your younger self one money lesson, what would it be? Lou, let's start with you.
I'm actually going to piggyback off of the last question because it's starting to have that discipline at a young age of a small line of credit. It's something that I enforce, coach, let me rephrase, when I'm speaking to my members that I'm working with directly of just best practices, keeping it under the 30% rule. And it doesn't matter if they're just starting out in their 40s or if they're 18, 20s, 30s, wherever they are in life, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint, and that's what everyone thinks it is. There's no easy way to just get a 740 or higher credit score. It's consistently having the dedication to make sure you're making the timely payments, to budgeting out and not going over the 30% on your credit card, or buying something and paying it off and having that $0 balance, to then it makes it easier to get a loan in the future.
It's a great point. It's ongoing. It never ends. It's a part
never
of your
ending.
life now. Tab, how about you?
The importance of saving and starting small. I feel that is so important. Even just starting a bank account at a young age, putting an initial deposit in, and then have that automatic transfer go in on a monthly basis so that way you just never see that money. And it's unbelievable over time that you realize life happens, emergency savings, hopefully you put enough money aside, but the importance of starting small.
Let's debunk some myths. I don't know if you guys know this, but I learned recently, and I was so saddened to hear this, that a lot of folks in their 20s and 30s think that they have to pay for financial advice, and they are out there paying financial advisors a fee when we offer free financial education, tips, tools, calculators, all on our website. There's a wealth of information. We go into organizations and we give free financial presentations. They can call us. We will answer questions. And it is wonderful that the credit union industry does this. But I mean, banks will do this too if you have your certain person that you're always working with. And money's tight to begin with, right? We don't want them to have to pay for things that they don't need to pay for. So I don't know if there's anything that you guys can talk about with that maybe they don't know that they need to know.
I think it's okay to have hard times. A lot of times I think that's why members don't come to us, is because they're ashamed of themselves and they're worried that we're going to judge them. And it's okay to have something bad happen, or that you just got so caught up in spending that now you don't know how you're going to pay it back, and you don't know who to talk to about this. So a lot of times you either ignore it because you think it's going to go away, but it's a lot of people are ashamed, and they don't need to be ashamed. And I think once they come to see us, they realize that we're not judging them. We're truly there to help them and then educate them going forward of how they can get back on track and stay on track, and that it is okay to make a mistake.
I think that's a really good point. We hear all the time, if someone does get in a bad situation and maybe they don't pick up the phone if a creditor calls, or they don't come in, they don't know what to do. To your point, maybe they're ashamed.
Yeah.
And really the first thing that they should do is call us, come in, because we will sit down with them and help them and say, hey, if you can't make that payment in full, what part can you do? To your point, let's go ahead and get you back on track, and how can we work with you to put you back in that good place? I will say that is a strength of First Source. I'm proud that we do that for our members, and hopefully this helps listeners out there, if they're in a position like that with their financial institution, that they know that they just need to call.
That's a
Tom?
good point. That's a differentiator between credit unions and banks. I mean, not that banks don't do it, but it's part of our mission. It's part of what we do on a daily basis and what drives us. So yeah, it's a great point. Never be afraid to, whatever your situation, call us, and we're here to help.
I think also the importance is trusting. You want to find that financial institution or that person that you trust. And that's what I love about the credit union, is that we continue to focus on building relationships with our members. And there's always more to the story than just what is on the credit report. Like Lynn said, bad things happen to good people, but we want people to feel comfortable to be able to come into the credit union and talk through all different stages of life. And that's what I also love about the credit union, is that we support our members through all their different stages of life.
Being in the call center, I'm able to reach a wide variety of our members. And the one thing that I highly stress with every single person, it doesn't matter if they have a very low credit score or a very high credit score, I can always say I can personally attest that I've done everything wrong credit-wise. So I'm now in a position where I can coach and guide, and I'm actually able in real time, since I've started with First Source, to see the progress that the members that I've worked with. And I highly encourage that they call me with any questions or anything they ever need, so that way they have someone that has their back.
Can you share some of those life lessons? What are a few things that you did that were wrong that we would want to tell our listeners today not to do?
When you're buying a house, we'll go back to that. Go room to room and budget it out. Don't put it on a credit card. Because what happens is that when you first have your first house, you're like, oh my gosh, I have to change everything. I need paint in my kitchen. I needed to get new countertops. I need a new bathroom vanity. Budget it out month to month of what you can afford to fix at that time. I personally decided to take on all projects at all times at one time. And
that's stressful just hearing you say that.
It buried me in credit card debt, because that's the first thing you go to. And what you don't realize is the 30% interest rate that you're going to pay on that credit card. So that even though, it's affordable, that minimum payment, your balance really never goes down. So then you just keep on swiping, and you get yourself where you're treading water, and you're just making minimum payments, and you're not seeing your balance anywhere, and you don't know what to do. It took me calling a credit union to actually get that advice. And I've since learned, and now I coach as I go through everything, room to room. It's the best thing I can ever say. If you ever buy a house, don't just tackle everything all at once.
That's a great point when you are making those credit card payments, to try to always make more than the minimum payment due. I mean, if you can, you want to pay it in full or as close to full as possible, because that interest is just going to roll over. So as much as you can with that, so to your point, room by room is going to be a much healthier way to spend and to make sure you're keeping your credit in check. What about the idea of, I'll start saving later? When should you really start to save?
When you should start to save is when you start thinking about saving. I'll save for later, because later never comes. There's always something that comes up. So as soon as that presents itself in your mind to say I'll start saving, then start saving. Don't put a timeline on it. Just start doing it. And then it becomes a habit. Okay, if I can get myself committed to putting $50 every paycheck away, it's going to become something that's natural, and you're just going to do it.
Agree.
So,
and when we think about that idea of saving, that's different for everyone. But I think to your point, that practice of moving that money over, that's a huge part of it, right? So your paycheck comes in, it usually comes into a checking account. Taking some of that and moving it aside and saying, I'm putting it in this savings account, then what is that savings account for, right? So you may have a savings account that's dedicated for emergency funds. You may have a savings account that's just your regular savings account. Maybe you have one that's specifically for vacation fund. You want to be able to travel and you don't want to have to use a credit card for that. But it's having the idea and the goal of where the money is going, what you're saving for, and then doing that practice. We talk all the time about, Deb and I talk about Starbucks versus Stewart's, right? And can I save money? First of all, Stewart's actually makes really good coffee.
I love Stewart's coffee.
If people don't know that.
And ice cream, by the way.
And,
Yes.
and ice cream. But if you say, okay, if I'm going to buy this coffee at Starbucks and it's going to cost me, $8, and if I'm going to buy this at Stewart's and it's going to cost me $2, great that you saved that. But what did you actually do with that $6? Did you consciously kind of write that down and say, okay, throughout this week, with the choices and changes I made, I actually saved $25. I'm going to take that from that checking account and move that into my savings. If you don't, you've only done half of it by not spending that extra money. Are you consciously moving that to the place to show what you've saved and put it together for a purpose?
That's a great point, because when you say saving, people may think, okay, take all the money in my paycheck and put it in an account and don't touch it. But the example you just gave, that's saving, right? Instead of spending $8, you spend $4, and then you've saved $4, and that you can actually save in an account. To answer your question, if somebody were to ask me the best time to start saving, I would say yesterday, right? But it's not always realistic. For me, an example would be saving and or investing, right? So as you mentioned, we're all over a certain age here. I think back and, in 1986, Microsoft had their initial public offering for their stock, and I think it was $21. At that point, I was 19 years old. In that year, I was 19 years old and going out to a bar, $20, right? And I just think back, $21 share of that stock then is worth roughly $120,000 today. So that's a good example of earlier you start saving and investing, the compounding interest is just, it's exponential.
Absolutely. That's a really good point.
I agree that you have to start saving early and kind of like thinking for your mind, playing the long game to understand that investing now and saving now, everybody wants that instant gratification of that instant high yield return, but it comes over time. And I think, I have two kids, 33 and 28, and that's what they had first thought when they got their first job, that they were going to, instantly save X amount of money by this amount of time. But saving takes time. And that's really what's most important that everyone has to understand.
And life happens, right? So sometimes we have to stop that saving that we started. We have to spend a little bit of that, but then it's just that mindset of building it back up. And it does take time. And that's why, if your employer offers a 401k or a savings plan, it's really good to just start putting that money in there, because it's going to come out of your paycheck, to your point, Tom, right? When you didn't know about the taxes coming out, but you don't see it, so you don't miss it, right? It's already swept into the account and it's saving for your future. So I know a lot of folks that are just starting out in their career. Sometimes they don't understand all of the benefits that the employer offers. And if your employer offers some type of savings program, you should definitely be putting a percentage in there of some sort, whatever you're comfortable with. I did get a very good piece of advice, which is anytime you get a bonus or a promotion or something like that, whatever your percentage is that you've been contributing, you should try to up that based on your new salary, because again, you're already used to that percentage. You won't miss it. And then you're continuing to invest in your future self. that's the other thing, right? It's not tangible today, which is really hard to grasp that concept. But the idea is you are saving for your future self and what you're going to need when you get older, because I know we all would love to retire.
Also, many employers match, right? What you put in up to a certain certain percentage in your 401k or your retirement plan. So if they do match and you're not putting any money in, you are really leaving money on the table.
Right. Free money. Absolutely. Absolutely. Anything else that any of you just want to share that maybe I didn't ask a specific question of, that just you wished that some of our younger members, when they come in with certain perceptions or certain questions, you wish that they would already know and feel comfortable with?
I would say talking less to the younger members and more to the maybe middle-aged or older members is teach your children these things at a young age. I didn't have that. And so I know that if I did, maybe I would have bought a couple shares of Microsoft stock instead of, going out every Friday and Saturday night. I probably still would have gone out every Friday and Saturday night, but I think I could have afforded.
Maybe you would have done both.
Yes. So for me, that's a big one. It's, they're your kids, teach them properly.
Same here, because it was something that my parents never discussed bills with us. Not that they didn't want to. I don't think they just didn't think.
I think it was a different generation, right? It just wasn't something that was talked about as much.
If my dad didn't have the money, he didn't buy it. He didn't have credit cards. He didn't take out all of these loans so that he could have a brand new car. It was more about taking care of his family than having something for himself. So when I started on my own, I didn't understand all of it. And I made sure, working here actually is what I learned a lot, just by helping our members. It helped me. And now my kids are 28 and 24, and I've been able to help guide them in a way that my parents couldn't. So I think that's an excellent point with anybody who is a parent now. Start young and teach your kids so that when they do get older, they have a really good knowledge of what it all means.
This is a really good segue, because our next podcast episode is going to be all about youth accounts. So I love that we're talking about what we're going to talk to the parents about. That's great. Deb, how about you?
I agree with my role. I do a lot of traveling and have the benefit and blessing of going out and teaching financial education. And it is key, and it is so, so important, even from a young age of like kindergarten and pre-K, just to instill those values and the importance of saving and, why should you do it? But even in like the high school level and the younger generation, they believe what they see on TikTok, and really they have to reel it back in and understand that, whether it be a bank or a credit union, the importance of earning dividends and saving and starting small is so important.
Yep, you're correct. And there are, to your point with the TikTok, there's some influence out there that they're not actually, certified or trained in financial institution and understanding these things, or
they're not real.
Some
they're
advice,
AI.
yeah, let's say some advice is just not correct, or to your point, yeah, they're completely AI generated. And so it's really important to have that trusted financial institution for that kind of advice. TikTok's great for other things, but for this stuff, you want that trusted resource. How about for Lou?
The biggest thing I could ever say is little changes. So for the younger generation, maybe save on going to the gas station and buying the extra Monster energy drink, because that $3 now, or if you say you buy the 3 for $8, you compound that over a year. That's $3,200 roughly that you're spending at a gas station if you did it 3 times a week. Take that savings, equate for it, and put it in a money market or a certificate of deposit and have your money actually grow. Another thing to drive home is that it doesn't matter if you're 18 or 52. There's always a perfect time to rebuild your credit or build your credit back. It's always, as I said prior, it's a marathon. So you can always get back into the swing of things. It just takes a little bit of time and dedication.
That's a good point. It's never too late to start saving either.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us today and sharing your knowledge. If any of our listeners have any questions, they can always go to fsource.org. Our website is a wealth of resource for financial education, tips, articles, budgeting, coaches, you name it. It's on there and it's all free for you to use. You do not have to be a member of the credit union to access those tools.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Katie.
you.